It is an anthem filled with meaning for Syrian-American virtuoso Malek Jandali. Among the words to his composition entitled I'm My Homeland, "Oh my homeland, when will I see you free?" Jandali played it before hundreds protesting outside the White House this summer against the regime of Bashar Al-Assad and in support of the uprising. Though he says the song intends a global message, his appearance and his performance may have almost cost his parents their lives back home in Damascus.
And when I performed at the White House, a few hours later, less than 4 days, the Syrian thugs and the security forces of that regime attacked my parents. Here's a regime who couldn't stand a 5-minute song.
Did you expect them to go after your parents?
Yes. I actually warned my parents, I'm going to be performing, watch out.
Jandali's 73-year-old father and his 66-year-old mother were attacked in their Damascus home in late July, an assault documented with photos and video a short time later.
Thank God they didn't kill them. They handcuffed his hands and they made him watch my mom being beaten.
He had tape placed over his mouth, handcuffed, beaten.
Mm-hmm. That's my dad. That's my mom after the attack.
She's bleeding from her eye and her head.
Mm-hmm. You can see her neck too.
Shortly after the attack, Jandali's parents were granted emergency visas to be with their son here in the U.S. He's convinced it was not random thuggery or even regime loyalists, but an attack orchestrated by the security forces of Bashar Al-Assad. Jandali contends that the attackers acted on information gathered here in the United States. He has feared for his own safety here, and perhaps with good reason. He's received threatening phone calls, and his own website was hacked in mid-December by the Syrian Electronic Army, which plastered a menacing message across the page.
How do you know that your parents were targeted because of what you did in Washington?
When they were beating my mom, she was screaming, "Why are you killing me? Why are you hitting me?" And they told her, "Well, we're doing this to teach you a lesson because your son is demonstrating against us." I have no doubt in my mind that there is a group of people who are surveilling, monitoring the Syrian-American community, and it's managed by the Syrian embassy in Washington.
That's a charge the Syrian government categorically denies. But it's not just Syrian expatriates making that allegation. In mid-October, the FBI arrested Mohammed Suwaid, a naturalized citizen from Syria and a former car salesman in Northern Virginia. Among the charges leveled in the indictment, that Suwaid was acting as an agent of the Syrian Mukhabarat, which is their national intelligence service. The indictment alleges he was actively spying on the expatriate community here and passing information back to Syria, where relatives of U.S.-based protesters would then be threatened or killed. Prosecutors say he had protests videotaped for delivery to Syrian agents. Neil McBride is the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, based in Alexandria. His office is prosecuting the case.
If you go through the indictment, it lays out in detail act after act after act of Mr. Suwaid engaging in conduct in which he's clearly trying to conceal, hide, and misrepresent the fact that he's an operative for Syrian intelligence. He's directing other people to make recordings of dissidents and protesters and then providing that information back to the Syrian government.
Hello.
Hi.
Part of the foundation of that case against Suwaid was built on wiretapped conversations he had in Arabic with his wife and with an FBI informant. Suwaid's defenders say the government has misunderstood the tone and content of benign conversations and mistranslated similarly harmless expressions unique to Syrian Arabic. But McBride says there are other parts of the case that link Suwaid to the Assad regime.
At a time of immense civil unrest in Syria, the president takes time to meet personally with Mr. Suwaid. Mr. Suwaid has access to the Syrian ambassador here in the United States. He has access to high-level members of the Syrian intelligence agency.
His trial is set for May. He is jailed without bail now. Though Suwaid freely admits he's an Assad supporter, his family and associates say he wouldn't risk his and his wife and children's livelihoods here. They insist he's innocent. Suwaid expressed a desire to be interviewed by the NewsHour, but our requests were denied by the authorities who hold him. His public defender also declined to speak on the record.
The Syrian embassy in Washington, D.C. has repeatedly refused NewsHour requests for an on-camera interview with either the ambassador or a top aide on the Suwaid matter and whether the Syrian government is running agents in the United States. But in a statement, they did say there have been concerted efforts recently by individuals and the media to spread lies and distortions regarding the embassy of Syria. These preposterous allegations claim that the embassy is involved in targeting or intimidating Syrian expatriates in the U.S., which is absolutely untrue.
The Syrian-American community is divided between support for the uprising and for the Assad regime. At a Syrian Orthodox church outside Washington, not a single parishioner wanted to talk about their riven homeland. The congregation's pastor, Fadi Abdul-Ahad, struck a careful middle ground.
We are with those people who ask rightly for their rights. They want it in the right way, going on the streets if they like, demonstrating peacefully, but not with those people who carry arms.
Only 10% of Syria is Christian, and the Assad regime has allowed them to practice and even attain high rank in the Syrian government. Some Syrian Christians are cautious to take sides in the uprising, and that caution has been reinforced by the recent travails of Christians in Egypt as Islamists come to the fore. Pastor Abdul-Ahad says no one is without blame in Syria, and every side is spreading its own misinformation.
Everyone is engaged in propaganda campaign. The government and the opposition. Everyone, the church even is engaged in propaganda campaign. Everyone campaigns for his political point of views and how he sees what is best for the country.
Abdul-Ahad says he has heard the rumors of the Mukhabarat's presence in the United States, but that he believes the Syrian government when it says they have nothing to do with it.
I have heard it through the news, and I have went to the Syrian embassy in D.C. and the statement posted over there that the embassy itself has nothing to do with it, and it never recruited anyone to work for it who is American and who lives in the U.S.
Those denials meant little at a recent meeting of the Syrian-American Council outside Washington. Speaker after speaker denounced the Damascus regime, speaking and singing of a Syria without Assad. Many told us stories of family harassed, assaulted, or worse, allegedly because of actions taken by their family members here in the U.S. Muna is from Michigan. She did not want her last name used for reasons that will become apparent. Her father, who left Syria 40 years ago, was marching outside the Syrian embassy this past spring when the ambassador invited him and others in to talk.
So he gave his first name, his last name, where he was from, and then same day, and I got a text from my sister in Abu Dhabi saying, isn't this crazy? The Mukhabarat just came to my uncle's house in Daraa and asked, what's your brother up to over there in America?
Another uncle of hers later died from a brutal beating security forces meted out when they came to arrest one of his sons. She told us that 10 cousins were also rounded up, tortured, and beaten. Muna said if she thought it would make a difference to her family's safety, she would stop protesting.
You know, Mukhabarat are everywhere in the Syrian community, so I'm certain that, you know, there's surveillance, but to me that's not gonna stop. The wall of fear is down.
But whether any part of that wall was ever built here will be a key issue when Mohammed Suwaid is brought to trial next spring.